Get ready for some ludicrous debates. This is our review of Change My Mind.
Change My Mind is a player-judge party game about convincing other players to change their preferred rankings for crazy topics. And I'm definitely bringing this with me for every party that I go to in the future.
I have a lot of fun playing this game, but there's definitely a house rule that the designer taught us that you have to play with. I'll tell you all about it after this quick how to play.
At the start of the game, each player gets a set of ranking tiles.
The most opinionated player goes first and becomes the ranker. They draw a category card and read that card out loud.
The ranker decides how the card will be ranked, best to worst or worst to best.
Then all players, including the ranker, put their ranking tiles in order with the other players trying to guess the ranker's order.
The ranker will then flip over their ranking tiles and the other players can try to persuade them to change their order by debating the topic.
Once the ranker has heard enough, everyone else will flip over their tiles and the player with the most matches wins the card.
The first player to 3 cards wins.
We were given a copy of Change My Mind from the publisher so that we could do this review video.
To find out more information or to buy a copy of the game, check out our links in the description below.
This game offers a good twist on the player-judge game because after the ranker reveals their answers to how they would order things, the other players can then convince them why either they're wrong or they should rearrange their order. So if you think that the player is going to do one kind of order and you're like, wait, that's not right, let me convince you otherwise, it gives you an opportunity to get a better score by convincing them that your score was right. In a lot of player judge games, you have to know your audience. Well, how are they going to pick based on what I do? Like, what's their humor level? If I give them this card, will they find it funny or will they just be like, oh, and then pass it aside? You got to know who you're playing with. With this game, you kind of have to know who you're playing with, but at the same time, when they flip over their tiles, if you were wrong, you still have a chance to, wait a second, no, this should be the order. This is what you should be thinking. I think I know you better than that.
The player judge games, when you're playing with a big group of people that you don't really know, that's kind of where sometimes it falls off for me because it's like, oh, I don't really know you. I'm in a group where everyone knows each other. In this one, we literally played it with people that we just didn't know. So, and still had a blast, like tons of fun because some of these cards are just ridiculous. It's like 17 and up topics. But for example, this one is the hottest Chris. And the options are Hemsworth, Pine, Evans, Pratt, and Walken. You rank those best to worst, and then people can debate, like, really? You're saying Chris Pine over Chris Hemsworth? And it's really funny, even just how passionately you can have a stranger like trying to convince you that Chris Hemsworth is hotter than Chris Pines or vice versa or something like that. When we all know it's Christopher Walken, right?
So the basic rules of the game is you place them in order, either best to worst or worst to best. However, when we were playing, the designer also taught us that you can add in a rule where you choose how you're going to rank them as well. So it's like, oh, the hottest Chris. You'd think, oh, okay, so who's the sexiest Chris? You order them in that way. Oh, no, I literally mean who's the hottest one? Which Chris is going to sweat the most? That's how I want to order them. Which one do you think is the sweatiest Chris? That's the hottest Chris. And then you can order them that way. So you can change up how you're going to determine the ranking of the category. I love that house rule. And when we were playing it, that's how I learned it. And I was like, oh, that's great. So when I actually read the regular rules and that wasn't the regular rules, I'm like, that should be the regular rules where you get to choose how the category is ordered. So not only best to worst, worst to best, but also how you're placing them in order. You could play this game with people who maybe aren't that creative. They could just say, no, I just mean hottest Chris, like who's the sexiest. You could play it normal, but I think adding that little twist of how you're gonna re-change it up could make the replayability of this infinite because every time you get this card, it's like, well, let me tell you how I'm gonna rank these ones.
Which one's the spiciest if you lick them?
Yeah.
Another thing I like about this game is that the ranker can decide like, all right, I've heard enough. So for those who maybe like it's their turn, they don't want all the attention, they have their order, nothing, they don't want to hear anything. They can just be like, here's my order. All right, I'm done. And then you move on and continue play elsewhere, right? You're like, oh, okay, next person, now you go. And then, then you can debate like, oh yeah, you think this or you think that. So it kind of invites other social level, people with different levels of like social comfort. It also invites them to play too if they don't want to be too engaged.
The game also comes with a variant, has some action cards that you can play with so that the player who has the lowest amount of cards gets to play an action card during the round, which could mix it up a little bit. So an action card could be a ball gag. So you choose a player, they can't speak for that round. So if you had this and you're like, oh, that person's always convincing other people to change their order, I don't like it. I'm gonna make them not have to be able to talk this round. So there are action cards that could mix it up when you wanna add another kind of variety to the game.
Yeah, this one's very bad. I think people would get very mad. Sorry, not sorry. Switch points with another player.
Well, that's very take that.
Yeah. I would probably just say it's my kind of humor. Like all of it's just jokes or just funny things that we talk about on normal, like at parties, you know, you're just hanging out with friends and someone brings up a wild conversation like, oh, I could fight a bear. It's like, really? Like you could fight a bear?
There's also NSFW cards in here. So we were reading the hottest Chris, and you can make that NSFW if you wanted to. But there are some other ones that are more NSFW, which we'll read right now. So if you want to skip over that, fast forward for about 20 seconds. For example, one of the NSFW ones that's always fun is, what's in my mouth? And then the options are a stranger's foot, a cup of horse semen, used tampon found on the bathroom floor, sweaty balls, or dick. The thing I really like about this game are the ranking tiles, and when the ranker flips them over, and then you can debate and try to get them to change their order. As I was saying earlier, in a lot of player judge games, you have to know the players in order to determine how they're gonna pick. Whereas this one, you don't necessarily have to know the players. Even if you don't even know the person, if you got them all wrong from the start, you can convince them and maybe get 1 or 2 points. Sometimes that's enough to be able to win the card. What did you not like about the game?
So I will say the base game where it's best to worst or worst to best, I think that's too limiting. I like the house rule that you mentioned where you can kind of change the ranking. You can say, oh, you know, things I would wish on my worst enemy or something, how you can like be creative. It adds that creative spark in there. Yes, the debating does too, but I think that having that option, that house rule is probably where it missed a little, I think.
I don't know why these weren't double-sided, other than you had a big box that you wanted to fill up. These definitely could have been double-sided and had fewer cards, or had more cards, because in the future, if you have expansions, because obviously there's a lot of different things you can come up with to create ranking systems. Now, if you add more cards, you pretty much fill up to here in the box. So if you add more cards, it's going to run out of room. Whereas if these were double-sided, you could have been only up to there. Then you had so much more room for future expansions and all that. So I think that them being double-sided would have made more sense, because you don't need the logo on each side. There's no reason why this needs to be face down. So you can have them double-sided. That would have made more sense on the production scale for me.
Overall, like I said, it's my humor. I had a lot of fun playing this game, you know, bringing it to parties and playing with our friends and everything. It's gonna be hilarious, right? So the thing about player judge games though is you played enough, these kind of like get old. However, I do feel that some of these topics you can always just like break it out and be like, all right, let's talk about this again. And everyone's just like, oh my God, the hottest Chris conversation again. So I would say I would buy this game.
Overall, I had a lot of fun with this game. I really enjoy it. I feel if you're playing with just the base rules, if you didn't know the designer, if he didn't give you that house rule, if you didn't watch this video, you didn't know the house rule, you just read the rules and you were playing it, I'd play this game again, but it would be like as fun as I thought it was. However, knowing that house rule, playing it that way, they definitely need to print that on the rule book in the future for the second edition of this game, or put it on the website, or put it on their social media, stress that that's the rules that you can play with in this game. Then I would definitely buy this game. And that was our review of Change My Mind.
What'd you think? Don't agree with our thoughts? Change our mind in the comments below.
Once again, we'd like to thank the publisher for giving us a copy so that we could do this review video. And as always, if you're enjoying our content, please like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Until next time, I'm Lee.
And I'm Kenny. I go party like a board gamer.